This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, as we are discussing various common clinical dermatological conditions, today we'll be talking about cutaneous tuberculosis. As we all, I think you people are very much familiar with tuberculosis because the first organ or first primarily invasion is lungs, and you know everything about pulmonary TB. But tuberculosis can occur in any organ of our body, secondarily, or even in case of skin, primarily also if there is inoculation. So we'll be discussing in detail about the etiology and clinical, mainly clinical picture of this condition, and a few points about the treatment. There won't be much change in the treatment compared to what protocols you follow for pulmonary tuberculosis. I'll be talking in the end. Today we'll be covering introduction, epidemiology, etiopathogenesis, clinical classification, differential diagnosis, and management. Introduction. Tuberculosis, one of the oldest, is one of, as we all know, is one of the oldest infectious disorders. Organism is identified 130 years back by Robert Koch in 1882. Intradermal skin test developed 100 years back by Montu, that is what we call as Montu test. And this intradermal skin test is not only used for tuberculosis. In dermatology itself, for various conditions, we use like neutrophilic dermatosis are there that you won't see that commonly. You people might not have seen, but even in that conditions also, intradermal skin test, the same physiology is used, and this is used in many other conditions nowadays. But initially, it was started only for tuberculosis 100 years back almost. And the tuberculosis TB vaccine is in use for almost 80 years, and chemotherapy, the drugs are later developed 50 years back. But still, even though this is such an old disease, I told you till now that this is such an old disease, but still there are many gaps in the treatment and identification of disease. But still, even though with all the treatments, all the vaccines available, all the investigations available, tuberculosis is second most common infectious cause of death after HIV and AIDS worldwide. And pulmonary TB remains to be the most common form of TB. And TB of extrapulmonary sites such as lymph nodes, bones, skin, abdomen, and pelvis is also on steady rise. Epidemiology. Globally, cutaneous tuberculosis is less common clinical forms of tuberculosis. About 1 to 2% of total extrapulmonary cases we find. Other extrapulmonary regions to be affected, as we told before, lung, bones, etc., can also be there. And this can be secondary to that extrapulmonary also. I will be discussing it later in clinical various clinical forms. Incidence is of 0.07% has been reported in a 10-year survey from Hong Kong. In India, cutaneous tuberculosis consists 10% of all cases of extrapulmonary TB. In India, TB is more common compared to other parts of India, and in that also 10% of cases. So that is not a less number. So we see quite a number of cutaneous tuberculosis in India. And 0.1 to 2% of total skin cases you see this cutaneous tuberculosis. Lupus vulgaris is considered the most common form of cutaneous tuberculosis in adults, and scrofioderma is seen in children. What are they? I'll tell you later. And the tuberculosis, especially lichen scrofulosaurum, has emerged as the commonest variant in many regions, including India. HIV infection and TB. Whenever we talk about any infection in not only in skin, any other organs of our body, we always talk about its correlation with HIV. Correlation is we correlate it because in HIV the immunity of the person is very low. So that's why the other co-infections are very common in these patients. And TB as such is a disease which depends upon the host immunity. So based on that, there is a rise in tuberculosis cases in HIV infection. The lifetime risk with HIV is 50% for TB to develop. I'm talking about TB as such. And in developing worlds, 50% are co-infected. And in the world, over 4 million people are co-infected, meaning HIV and TB coexist. 5% develop disseminated infection, which is the cause of the death in HIV patients. Etiology, you all know the common organism causing this Mycobacterium tuberculosis is a major etiological agent, and also there are many other atypical Mycobacterium which can also cause tuberculosis, but not always. Some of them are Mycobacterium bovis, which cause up to 1 to 1.5 of total cases. But if the other forms of atypical Mycobacteria, generally the body is immune enough to protect from those organisms. But when it's with HIV, like when the infection is along with HIV, like Mycobacterium avium, then there are 2/3 of the cases are because of avium. Generally, non-HIV patients, tuberculosis is most major etiological agent compared. So pathogenesis, there is no endotoxin released by the organism. There is only the tissue destruction which is mediated by the host immune response. Skin manifestations depends upon three important things: the sensitization status of the patient, that is the vaccine, and also vaccine which we get at almost after birth, and then cellular immunity, the immunological status of the patient, and routes of infection. So based on all these things, the skin manifestations, where it occurs, how long does it occur, and in what form it occurs, this depends upon these three main points. Pathogenesis, how? Exposure. The organism enters the skin. That is called primary skin, that can be due to primary pulmonary infection or direct skin inoculation. Then the mycobacteria is engulfed by the macrophages present in the skin, and the antigen is presented to CD4 and Th1 cells. Within 2 to 3 weeks, there is hypersensitivity. It can go in either of the forms. There can be hypersensitivity reaction, granuloma formation, or caseation necrosis. So all these three also again can go into either the disease based, as I told you, based on the immunity and based on the previous vaccinations or the patient's previous health. The disease can be stopped at this point, or it can go to latent phase, or the disease can progress. This progression of the disease occurs in 5 to 10% of total cases who are infected or exposed to the organism. What are the predisposing factors which lead to increased infection of TB? That is, as I told, HIV. HIV pandemic leading to the resurgence in TB and drug-resistant strains of TB is a very big example of how they are coexisting. And use of immunosuppressive therapy if the patient is being treated for any other conditions. This is the second point is very important in skin, because see, in skin generally all the major diseases like immunobullous disorders or any other disorders which you can develop major like drug reactions, they are treated with high doses of steroids, systemic steroids. All of those cause this immunosuppression. So when you admit a patient in a dermatological ward, and I am talking about mainly dermatology in a ward, when you're treating them with high systemic steroids, you should always have a thought of co-infections when they're in like TB. So initially we should take a lung X-ray, chest X-ray to compare it by the time of discharge, because we actually personally also I saw like few cases where the patient came with some other disease and is being with immunosuppression. Patient is in the ward, and by the end he got cough, and we did a chest X-ray and there was TB. So we should always be careful in case of immunosuppressive patients. And ease of global travel and migration also increase the risk of TB in other nations where previously it is not there. And poverty and malnutrition. Factors affecting the host pathogen interaction are the virulence of the infecting mycobacteria and the route of infection, prior contact with the bacilli, host immune response, and environmental factors. And routes of infections, it can be either exogenous, endogenous, or auto-inoculation. Exogenous is nothing but direct inoculation of TB bacillus from an infected person, breachiness when there is any trauma to your skin, and then there is a contact of the direct contact from the patient who's directly having it, and direct transfer. That is exogenous. Endogenous is nothing but already there will be primary focus of infection sometimes, and it reaches to the skin through contiguous involvement of skin, or through lymphatic spread, or through hematogenous dissemination. And the third one is autoinoculation. A patient has a lesion in the leg, he scratches, he won't know that it's TB, and somewhere again he scratches. That is autoinoculation from one part of the body to the other part. Based on the routes of infection, the severity of the disease depends, and the prognosis of the disease depends. So this is very important to know by what route the infection has occurred in this patient. So based on Bate et al. Classification, we can classify cutaneous tuberculosis like presentation symptomatically or clinically into two types: exogenous cutaneous tuberculosis and endogenous cutaneous tuberculosis. Exogenous cutaneous tuberculosis, two main types, that is the chancre and tuberculosis varicosa cutis. And endogenous, by contiguity or in autoinoculation, you can see scrofuloderma, orifacial tuberculosis, and lupus vulgaris. Don't worry, I'll be showing photos of each type, then you'll get clarity. Don't get confused at this level only. And then by hematogenous dissemination, that is through blood, it can be lupus vulgaris or gamma, or acute miliary tuberculosis. And there is one more factor called type called tuberculitis. Whenever in dermatology you hear IDS, when it ends with IDS, that is dermatophytid, nothing but the focus of infection will be somewhere else in the body, and the antibodies are which act on that infection, they show their response over the skin, and these tuberculitis are formed. So when you biopsy these tuberculitis, you'll never find the organism here. Not only in the case of tuberculosis, dermatophytid is nothing but fungal infection. So the focus will be somewhere else, and the disease, the lesions will be on some other site. So here you will see only immunological reaction on biopsy. You will never find, you can never isolate a microorganism from an ID reaction. So what are the types of tuberculitis for in skin are papillonephrotic tuberculosis, erythema induratum of Besing, lichen scleroforum, and phlebitic tuberculosis. Phlebitic or nodular granulomas has been recently proposed as a new tuberculosis. Initially it was not there. This is a recent addition. First, coming to the exogenous forms, like firstly, most commonly, tuberculosis chancre. This is a rare form of cutaneous TB and develops in the adults without any previous sensitization. That is, they won't have any vaccine, and usually they follow any previous breach in the skin, abrasions, cuts or ulcers, circumcision, tattooing or ear piercing with unsterilized needles, contact with infected sputum. So these type of conditions will lead to this tuberculosis chancre. It is a localized form and most commonly seen on the face or extremities, because these cuts and all these extremities are more prone for this trauma. Face and extremities, and most commonly we can see this tuberculosis chancre or primary inoculation TB. Remember, they will not have previous sensitization of tuberculosis. In these cases, after 2 to 4 weeks of inoculation, initially they will develop a firm, painless, brownish papule, and within 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes it will go into firm, non-tender ulcer with undermined bluish margins, and then gradually it slowly heals up. It may take up to 12 months with scars. Rarely progresses into other forms like lupus vulgaris and scleroderma if untreated. But sometimes in 3 to 8 weeks, it can progress into regional primary complex, and then this subsides with calcification, rarely cold abscess, and also sinus development. So in this picture, if you can see on the extremities, this is a tattoo inoculation in two brothers, like elder and younger. And here it progressed into lupus vulgaris. Initially, it would have formed, they would have neglected it, thought some reaction to tattoo. And you can see this bluishness. This bluishness is common for tuberculosis. And mostly that elevated look is also common for tuberculosis. Remember the picture, this is not very uncommon. You can actually see these cases. And then coming to tuberculosis varicosa cutis or warty tuberculosis, as the synonym is because the warty, nothing but the lesion looks somewhat warty. So exogenous inoculation at trauma-prone sites in pre-sensitized. The only difference between before and here is pre-sensitized. So with moderate, they will have some form of high degree of, at least moderate degree of immunity. So this can be due to accidental inoculation by physicians, pathologists, or postmortem attendants in postmortem attendants, etc. Auto inoculation by sputum in active pulmonary TB patients, accidental inoculation from infected sputum. Clinically, as I told, it appears like wart-like papule on the verrucous block. It regresses or heals with a thin scar. Lymphadenitis is rare, and sites are trauma-prone sites: fingers, hands and feet, ankles, etc. So you can see this is a very like warty kind of a lesion in the sole of this person, and in the palms, warty lesions of TBVC in adults with good immunity on extremities on trauma-prone sites. The name, if you remember the name only, you can identify verrucosa. Verrucosa, wherever it comes, it means warty. And differential diagnosis for this particular tuberculous verrucous cutis is hypertrophic lichen planus verruca vulgaris, that is nothing but common warts. Chromoblastus mycosis is deep fungal infection. Leishmaniasis parasite infection. Hypertrophic LP is most, we confuse it most commonly with hypertrophic LP and verruca vulgaris. Chromoblastomycos deep fungal infections are also not that common. So these two conditions we should separate, and with biopsy we can clearly differentiate the two, and also based on history. And then coming to scrophulodderma. Scrophulodderma occurs as a result of contagious spread from an underlying primary tuberculous focus. That can be lymph node, bone, joints, or organs, anything. So here more common in children but affects all groups. Lymph nodes, cervical lymph nodes are most common, followed by axillary, pre and post auricular, submandibular, inguinal, etc. And clinical features of scrophulodderma: firm subcutaneous nodule is fixed over the skin. In the underlying skin, you can find the actual focus, primary focus, and it gradually forms into cold abscess overlying the lymph node or bone or the joint which is primarily infected, and then secondary ulceration, sinus tract formation, and then the large ulcer with undermined edges and bluish boggy margins. See this slide picture. This if you see first picture, tubercular abscess overlying rib cage with impending rupture. Maybe the primary focus is bones of the rib cage, and overlying that on the skin you can see a cold abscess type of a thing. When we take the smear from here, and you can easily identify the organism. And coming to the second picture, here the lymph nodes, cervical lymph nodes are the primary focus, and superficially you can see scrophulodderma over the cervical lymph nodes. Here it's already ruptured and is going into formation of ulcer. The violishness we can see. And then here in the third picture, you can see the underlying bone here. In the metacarpal bones, you can see. And so superficially it appears like this. Because of the immunity, this is not, maybe the patient is having good immunity, so this is not much ulcerated. So underlying condition giving rise to cutaneous tuberculosis is scrophulodderma. This is also with underlying TB focus in the cervical lymph node. It is later stages, maybe little healed. That's why you can see little dryness and it is healed. Right? And the course, see, as scrophulodderma, as we already told that immunity is little better in these patients. Scrophulodderma runs a very protracted course. It tends to heal spontaneously over months and years, and leaves behind, because of the formation of sinus tracts over this. Anywhere you find any disease, you find sinus tract formation over the skin. When it heals, it definitely leaves a scar, and it forms cerebriform or bridging scars, and they leave pockets of retraction. And underlying focus may become osteolyte, may reveal, when we do further investigations, will definitely reveal the primary focus of the infection. Differential diagnosis, as we saw in before, bacterial abscesses and bacterial osteum bone infections, hidradenitis suppurativa. But hidradenitis suppurativa is generally we should take, it will be more common in the inguinal lymph node area, whereas TB more common over the cervical lymph node area. Atypical infections and sporotrichosis, actinomycosis. This is nothing but deep fungal infections, not very common, and tumor metastasis. And next, coming to orificial tuberculosis, it is a rare form that affects the middle-aged elderly man with impaired cell-mediated immunity. Here, there will be auto-inoculation by the patient, like a mycobacterium to into skin or mucosa of the adjoining orifice in the patient with advanced, if the patient is having intestinal or genitourinary or a pulmonary TB, then there may be the inoculation may be there for the orificial area, and the site is around mouth, perianal, and external genitalia. And small edematous reddish nodule, it's painful, non-healing, and the shallow ulcers, but pain is irrespective of the size of the ulcer, the pain will be more. Prognosis is very poor because already there will be very intense advanced internal disease and there is compromised immunity in that patients only. This orifice will be there, so prognosis is very bad in this patients. And then coming to another type, lupus vulgaris, is most common type of cutaneous tuberculosis. And here, paucibacillary disease in patients with moderate to high immunity affects all age group, and head and neck and gluteal region are more common. The infection is acquired by lymphatic spread, hematogenous spread, or from direct extension from tuberculous focus and at the site of inoculation. And clinical features, reddish brown plaque extends slowly peripherally with central atrophy and scarring, may result in contractures because of the scarring. Apple jelly nodules at the advancing edges can be seen. This is very characteristic and very important to diagnose. May lead to destruction of the underlying cartilage. Regional lymphadenopathy is present, and squamous cell carcinoma may develop in the scar or the chronic ulcer. So there is chance for malignant transformation in this condition. Clinical variants based on the look of the lesion, plaque type, ulcerative or mutilating, hypertrophic, vegetating or tumor-like, and atrophic and plantar. So here in these pictures, you can see in the first, this young child has lupus vulgaris over the nose, and because of the disease, the cartilage, underlying nasal cartilage is broken, and there's destruction of the nose cartilage completely. This is in this patient, and here you can see the gluteal region, multifocus lupus vulgaris with characteristic central clearing and advanced margins. You can see this is also very characteristic feature. Centrally, you see atrophy and the resolving, and the lesion is resolving, and in the periphery, the edge of the lesion advances. And this is another. You can see here also you can see the scarring, and because they maybe the immunity of the patient is good, so it is actually very less destructing than compared to the other forms. And see in this this is warty growths, as I told, varicose forms, one of the present type of presentation. And see this, you can see the central clearing with the advancing edge, erythematous margins. This is a small child over the face. Differential diagnosis, sarcoidosis, because of apple jelly nodules. That is one more characteristic features in sarcoidosis. So that is a close differential diagnosis. And the destruction of cartilage and bone, as we know, Hansen's disease, leprosy also, it will be present in the nose. So Hansen's also should be considered always. Lupus erythematosus, granuloma facial based on the location, leishmaniasis, and I told you there is a chance of squamous cell carcinoma, so that can also be a differential diagnosis for lupus vulgaris. And another form, tuberculous gamma, or also known as metastatic tuberculous abscess. This is because of hematogenous dissemination of the organism, that is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, from primary TB focus during lowered resistance or decreased immunity. Undernourished children and immunocompromised patients are most commonly affected with this type. And single or presence as single or multiple firm, non-tender erythematous nodule, and it breakdowns to form undermined ulcers and sinuses, and subsequent course is similar to that of Staphyloderma. It will form bridging, scarring, and then later heal. First may be positive of AFP. So you can see here, in this case, this the gamma gummatus, and this is little healed. That's why you can see the scarring. And then coming to acute miliary tuberculosis, it's a rare and very severe form of TB seen in very ill or very less, like very immunocompromised patients. Massive heterogeneous dissemination of Mycobacterium tuberculosis into the skin. So there is no particular one, two lesions. It's affecting the whole body. Affects most commonly children, immunosuppressed, HIV co-infected. Always think of HIV when you see miliary tuberculosis, and then other measles or other viral infections also where immunity is dropped, we can find acute miliary tuberculosis. Clinically, profuse crops of minute bluish papules, vesicles, and pustules all over the body may become necrotic to form ulcers. Poor prognosis, but occasionally they respond to treatment. And differential diagnosis like exanthematous reaction, lesions like in varicella, intraviral, or pityriasis lichenitis at varioliform secuta or pleva, that is nothing but pleva. All these conditions, multiple papules will be present all over the body, so we should always differentiate it from the others. But prognosis is very bad. We have to know that and explain to the patient. And then this coming to the important, like the next important type, that is tuberculosis. Here we have to know few diagnostic criteria before you term it, because if we don't have an organism there, so we should make sure the other all diagnostic criteria are there. Tuberculosis represent cutaneous immunological reaction to the presence of Mycobacterium tuberculosis or their products in a patient with significant immunity. They have good immunity. So that's why there will be immunological reaction. And diagnostic criteria are tuberculoid histology on skin biopsy, and absence of organisms, smears should not contain organisms, negative mycobacterium culture from the lesion, evidence of tubercular focus elsewhere, active or can be healed, strongly positive tuberculin test will be there, and swift resolution with starting ATT. Classic tuberculate, they can be of three times: micropapillar, papillar, nodular. That is nothing. Micropapillar is smallest, like tiny papules. Little papillar, PNT is little bigger, and nodular erythema induratum of best. The recently described, as I told you, the recent new element is phlebitic tuberculate or nodular granulomatous phlebitis, or superficial thrombophlebitic tuberculate may necessitate inclusion in the fourth member of the tubercular sector. I never saw the fourth type. We always see LS and PNT and EIB are common, but this is a recent edition, only theoretical. We never saw in our OPs. Then coming to lichen scrofulosum, one of the most common presentations in children. It is asymptomatic, as we told, micropapules, that is 0.5 to 3 mm, closely grouped, skin color to erythematous, follicular or perifollicular, flat top to spinous. Papules are present over the back, trunk, and proximal limbs. It is sometimes confined to vulva. Then it is called genital tuberculin. And then underlying focus of TB include pulmonary TB, skin TB, rarely abdominal, intracranial, and endometrial foci. A systemic focus of TB is detected in majority of lichen scrofulosum cases. See in this picture, you can see it doesn't look anything like the previous picture. So this is very grouped, skin colored, mildly scaly follicular papules present in a patient. Strongly here, the monitor should be highly positive with pulmonary focus in TB. Positive Monty test, and the same patient's pulmonary, you can see the lesion. And coming to papillonecrotic tuberculate or PNT, recurring crops of symmetrically distributed form dusky red necrotizing, as the name suggests, necrotizing papules and pustules predominantly over the extremes, contrary to the before thing where we saw on the trunk. And isolated lesions involving male genitalia is also seen in children as well as adults. Lymphadenopathy may be present. Associated pulmonary TB is present. Constitutional symptoms like fever, asthenia may precede cutaneous manifestations. We always will get confused with varicella and pleva, so we should check. See, necrosis is present. In previous lesions, they're just normal papules, but here extensive necrosis is present. And erythema induratum of Bessel's, indolent and recurrent nodular lesions, and the sites or calves may occur on upper limbs, thighs, buttocks, and trunk. Affects young or middle-aged obese women. Tends to ulcerate during winters, forming ragged, irregular, and shallow ulcers with a bluish edge. resolution is low even with adequate ATT. So these are various types based on immunity. And coming to management of cutaneous tuberculosis, first you should know this disease is to be notified, and then identification and treatment of the underlying tuberculosis focus, which is identifiable in almost all the cases, should be done. Identifying and treatment of coexisting infections such as HIV, because this is an immunocompromised disease. And then specific chemotherapy, family screening also should be done, and other measures to be taken. Investigations, these are general investigation, CBC, LFT, RFT, MON2 must, sputum for AFD must, radiological must, the chest X-ray, and if there is any lesions underlying, so we have to go for that specific X-ray of that bone, ultrasound abdomen, and CECT if required. Not for all the cases, if required, CECT. And then FNAC if there is any lesion, nodule, and then skin biopsy must, and microculture of the culture should be done by LJ medium, which the smear is taken from this FNAC, PCR, antigen detection, and biochemical characteristics. The histology, the common finding is characteristic granuloma composed of epithelioid cells, lymphocytes, and Langerhans Jain cells. You people should be knowing better types of Jain cells and all, so we can't go into deep. But in tuberculosis, you should know what type of cells you will find. Based on the immune response of the skin, the granuloma may be restricted and specific and well contained, or it can be sparsed out. So well-formed granulomas with absence of necrosis is lupus vulgaris and lichen scrofulosum, where immunity is good. Granulomas with caseous necrosis will be seen verrucous cutis, chancre, acute miliary tuberculosis, orificialis, and papillonephroid, where immunity is bad. Presence of poorly formed granuloma is seen in scrofuloderma, where there is underlying condition which is spreading to the superficially, that is scrofuloderma and gamma. In diagnosis, based on absolute criteria and other indications, positive growth should be seen, and successful guinea pig inoculation, identification of mycobacteria. See, absolute criteria may not, like we don't have, sometimes the patient may not have the money, or even we don't have this inoculation and all nearby also. So theoretically you should write this, but when you see a patient, we can't always have all the criteria check. So based on clinical eye only, we have to diagnose and treat the patient. But what we can do MON2 test, we can do AFB staining, and we can do culture. That three should be enough for us. And characteristic histopathology should be found. Other indicators, positive tuberculin test. These things are more important when we come to daily practice. Presence of active proven TB elsewhere based on the X-rays, and AFB in the lesion, and the response to ATT. Regimens, standard regimen for cutaneous. I am talking only about cutaneous tuberculosis. There are phase 1, phase 2. Treatment is for 6 months. Category 1, how you do with other pulmonary TB. HRZD plus 4 daily or dots thrice weekly. The dosage you should remember, not only here, anywhere for your final year, you have to remember mg per kg, not like the total doses. So I just mentioned it here. Isoniazid 5 mg per kg per day, that is roughly 300 per 60 kg adult. And if it's dots, 600 mg alternate day, that is thrice weekly. And if daily, rifampicin 10 mg per kg per day. Dots also similar to, and pyrazinamide 25 mg per kg per day, same in the dots. Ethambutol 50 mg per kg per day, that is 20. 2 months with 4 the drugs, and 4 months with 2 drugs. And special consideration, surgical intervention may be required along with ATT. If there is any lupus vulgaris or any contractures, as I told you before, then there should be surgical recommendations to avoid the contractures. And HIV positive and infected individuals, we should take care of the HIV along with TB, the drugs also. If there is any drug resistance in cutaneous TB, multi-resistant tuberculous bacteria isolates showing resistance to rifampicin and INH, with or without resistance to other drugs, and extensively drug-resistant TBS, tubercular infections caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis resistant to both INH as well as fluoroquinolones is also seen. Recently, few cases are also being reported in India. When there is poor, when should we think that there is drug resistance? When there is poor compliance and inadequate all the other reasons should be excluded, then only we should think of MDR TB. That is like poor compliance, inadequate doses, wrong diagnosis, all should be excluded. Then only we should think of multi-drug resistance, because that is not that common in India. Thank you. Next class we will talk about the other common conditions. Leave your attendance in the inbox. I think.